Hey, you're listening to Rising into Mindful Motherhood. I'm your host, Dr. Katie Wood. I'm a barefoot mama bear, pharmacist, integrative fertility health coach, and lover of all things nature and animals. I'm on a mission to have intentional conversations about the good, the bad, and the ugly when it comes to fertility, pregnancy, postpartum, and beyond. My mindful guests and I will be talking about struggles, wins, natural wellness, and how we grow and transform as we enter motherhood. My background in healthcare has shown me how broken our medical system is. My own struggles to become pregnant has shown the lack of support for mamas to be, the lack of guidance for women to have a nourishing and vibrant pregnancy, the isolation, mom guilt, and all the things we hold after bringing baby earthside. I want this platform to be a place where women can feel connected, safe, and supported to share and hear their stories. A place to use our voice to discuss and advocate about what we need and deserve as mothers. So let's dive in, shall we? Hello and welcome to Rising into Mindful Motherhood. Today I'll be talking with Ghazal Conrad. She's a wife, a mom, and a holistic birth coach, and she focuses on hypnobirthing and doing everything the natural way. Today we're going to be talking about hypnobirthing, home birth, how to have a pain-free birth, and possibly hospital interventions and how they lead to C-sections. So welcome, Ghazal. I'm so excited to have you here. And I would really just love to dive right in and talk about a little bit about your background and where the inspiration and passion for natural birth came from.
Sure, yeah. I'd love to because this is something that obviously I'm very passionate about. I've actually studied. I'm a birth coach now, but before that, I was in different fields. But I started out in school in double majoring in biology and psychology, and it's crazy. I now hindsight is 2020. I realized that I studied biology separately and I studied psychology separately, but there was never a connection or any courses that connected the two, so the mind and body. So it was always that, okay, this is separate from this. So now that I'm a lot older, I actually have experienced so many things that kind of put those things together. And one of them was obviously the birth of my daughter. That came about a year and a half ago. Before that, though, I was always passionate about babies. I was obsessed with babies. My mom was always scared that I was going to have a baby as a teenager. But thankfully, that didn't happen. And she always said, like, if it's your passion, just follow it through. And that's kind of where that came about. Because as soon as I got pregnant, that was when I started hearing so many stories. Because you don't really know much about, birth or parenthood even or any of that stuff until you're actually getting involved in it. So when I did, I started seeing that, there's just so much. I guess the society tells you so much things that puts fear in you. Obviously, it's the same with a lot of other topics, but that was the one that I noticed the most, especially when I said I wanted to have a home birth. That was just the biggest thing that everybody around me thought I was crazy. Why would I ever want to not be in a hospital setting where there is safety and there is doctors and things like that? So I'm glad I stuck to my guns, and it ended up being the best experience of my life. And I'm so thankful that it turned out the way it did, because now I can actually talk about it and share it with other moms. So that's kind of where we started. And now I coach moms, especially first time moms, because as a first time mom, I think there's just way too many unknowns. And because sometimes we doubt ourselves and we think we're not the expert in that field, that we have to leave it to the experts, which are the medical professionals or, whoever else is basically going to help you birth that baby. So that's where we're at now. And I'm passionate about helping moms overcome that so that they can experience a positive birth the first time around. I always say your first birth is not a practice run. So don't treat it that way. Yeah.
Awesome. I love how in the very beginning, as someone who took biology and then psychology, that you just mentioned that there was like no connection there because There really isn't, but there
Yeah,
should be. Like, there should be some place where, that bridge or that gap is bridged to really put everything together, right? Holistically,
yeah,
mind, body, and soul. So it's amazing that you were kind of like, that, like looking back, like that never happened. And it was your own, life experiences and things like that, where it was like, aha, it's just something I wanted to note because yeah, you can go through school and have, multiple degrees in various settings, but you could really be missing like that link where it
big
does connect
link.
everything.
Yes,
Yeah, totally. And I think being pregnant and giving birth, like that really requires you like to be tapped in physically, mentally, like emotionally, spiritually, like all of those things. So yeah, I just love that you brought that up.
yeah, it's definitely a full mind, body, soul, like you said, experience when you are giving birth, especially when it's a natural birth and there's no interventions. You're so connected to your body without even realizing it. You don't really know what's going on, but that's basically what's happening. You're learning to tune into your body and listen to your body. And the better you get at practicing to listen to your body, the better experience you will have during your birth.
Hmm.
So, yeah, it's definitely crucial.
Yeah. So kind of going back to what you mentioned with society and what society will have you think, I would love to know like what was your idea or thought process around birth or pregnancy or any of those things before you were in the thick of it and then maybe you started doing your own research? Like, did anything really change or shift for you? Because I know for me, it definitely did. So I'm curious if anything did for you.
Yeah, so one of the things was that everybody just says, women have been giving birth for centuries. So, yes, that's very true, and that your body will know what to do. So, I've noticed that a lot of women will go into their first birth thinking that same way. So they'll think that, okay, I don't need to really do much because, my ancestors have been doing this for centuries and, my body will know what to do. But in this day and age, especially in our first world countries, it's very hard to do that because there's so many interventions. If there are no interventions, then the hospitals and things don't make the money because that's how they are a business, so they're there to make money. And if you are wanting to be having a natural birth, then you have to try to stay away from interventions as much as possible. That was one of the things I did learn because I researched this actually I started researching about natural birth 4 years before I even got pregnant. I was so determined that I was going to have birth the way I wanted it, that I wanted to make sure, I know everything, not everything, obviously, there's going to be so much that I won't know, but as much as I could possibly know and as much tools as I could have so that when I do end up getting pregnant, that I at least have some basic knowledge, which really did help me. And that's kind of how I've compiled things now, that the way I teach it. But yeah, it was that society makes you think that you are not able to do it on your own, that you need the assistance of the doctors, that you have to go and be monitored constantly in a hospital, things like that. And also witnessing my friends and so many people around me that went down that road before me, and they ended up having C-sections, unwanted C-sections, because nobody really says, "Hey, I want to have a C-section." I mean, there might be some, but majority of women actually say they do not want to have a C-section. That's actually one of the, I did a research, and one of the biggest fears was women did not want to have C-sections. So if that's the case, then one of the biggest ways is to avoid the interventions. But if you think that you need to have doctors and medical professionals there to constantly be monitoring you, then you're under that influence that you might get intervene. So that pretty much breaks the flow of your birth, and then that cascades down a spiral of things that might lead to a C-section.
Hmm. Right, like the first intervention is when you walk into the hospital, pretty much, or put on that
Pretty
hospital
much,
gown.
actually. Yeah, I think it was a quote by an OB that he said, the biggest mistake a healthy pregnant woman would make is to leave her house. And that stuck with me because that was a male OB that actually said that.
Mhm.
And that's basically it. Because as soon as you go to the hospital and you get checked in, you're basically considered admitted. Doesn't matter how many centimeters you are, if they're going to keep you there, they're going to
Mm.
keep you. And the first thing is you can't eat anything. So that to me is the first intervention. It's like,
Right.
how are you going to run a marathon without eating anything? And giving birth is like a marathon because there's so much energy involved that it could take hours, it could sometimes even take days. So how could you possibly not be able to do the one simple thing? And that's just one of many interventions. But yeah, to me, I always say, even if you do end up going to the hospital for a birth, make sure you stand your ground and say no to the interventions. And knowing what those interventions are and in the order that they do come helps you along the way to know that, okay, if I say yes to this, this is what's going to come next after it. So let me make that informed decision.
Yeah, yeah. And, even just being able to labor at home for as long as you can. So then,
Yes.
when you do get to the hospital, it's not because I haven't experienced it personally, but I've heard about it where it's like you're on the doctor's time. And if you've hardly labored before you got to the hospital, then so much time is going to go by. And then I feel like when they're going to start pressuring you to, all right, let's do some Pitocin. And then that causes extremely painful contractions, which then it's like, oh, I can't do this. I need an epidural. And you know how it goes. But so I know laboring at home as long as you can. And
Yeah.
I think at the end of the day, and you've been talking about it, is just educating and empowering yourself because when you know the options that could be presented in front of you and you know how those options can affect your body, affect your birth, right? Like Pitocin is a lot more painful than natural contractions, and it can put baby under more distress. So then that can lead to other things, even just outside of like needing an epidural. And it's just, I don't know. I feel like if you know that, it makes you kind of question it a little bit more, second guess it, and not be so like, oh, yeah, this is what they tell me to do. So this is what I'm going to do. I think
Yeah.
that that's sadly a missing piece is either the education or the birth course that someone took really didn't do, justice around
Mhm.
birth and all of the things.
Yeah.
Or maybe someone didn't really take the time to educate themselves either. So that's where I think having like a birth coach or a doula can be so helpful because, yeah, education, knowledge is power and it's powerful when you know all of the
Yeah.
steps. And for me, I feel like watching the videos grow or like movies growing up, like they always make birth seem like
Right?
scary and
Yes.
violent. And like women are just like enraged and screaming and all these things. And I remember, being a little bit like, oh, I don't want to do that. And then
Right? Who
ironically,
wants that?
yeah, yeah, it doesn't seem like a nice, don't get me wrong, like being in labor was painful for me. I had back labor, but it wasn't like as drastic as it's portrayed in the movies. And if it wasn't for my education that I did to really learn about birth, like who knows? In my mind, I probably would have been like, yeah, give me all the drugs so I don't have to feel that. But really, there's just so many benefits to avoiding them at all costs, if possible.
Yeah. Yeah. And even like with movies, like you said, it's movies are there to entertain us. So if there's no drama, then it's really not entertaining. So I think even with movies, literally, I've never seen I actually have to say one movie I saw, Wanderlust, is the only one movie I've ever seen where a woman is naturally birthing in the movie, and it's a very funny movie. But she's actually a hippie and she lives in a commune. So when you tell people you're having a home birth or that you're wanting to have a natural birth, that's the image that goes to their mind. Because again, the TV and the media has impacted us so much that we think normal birth is that painful, gory, screaming on top of your lungs and wanting to kill your husband. Like it's like that versus, a woman who's so calm and she's breathing and I don't know where she just gives birth. And Paul Rudd is like, what just happened? So it's actually really different how people perceive a natural birth versus, a normal hospital birth. But having a natural birth, if you've never experienced it, it's nothing like you could ever imagine. It's just so your out of body experience that you've never experienced. You literally become somebody else. I mean, mind you, giving birth, regardless, having a baby does do that to you, but having a natural birth has that empowering feeling that you're like, I am a goddess. I can do anything at this point because you're like, I just birthed the baby and I didn't need an epidural. I didn't need anybody's, telling me how to sit or what position to get into. I was listening to my body and my body told me this is the way to do it. And that way you're, there's a lot of other things that go into it, but even communicating with your baby and like, just spiritually, if you're connected and thinking that, okay, I'm talking to my baby and my baby is telling me signals. So I got to listen to those signals of what my baby is telling me so that I can work together to be able to have this amazing birth experience. And it does take effort. So it's not that it comes to us naturally just because, our ancestors have been giving birth for centuries, because if you've never given birth, this is totally not natural. It's something that you've never experienced. You have no idea what's happening to your body. You don't know what's normal. You don't know what's not. So it's definitely a lot of effort that goes into it to be able to create that birth that you want. So like anything else, if we want to be successful in anything, we have to put the work into it to be able to have that result towards the end where we're like, we're proud of it, we're empowered, we feel more confident, and just feel like you can do anything really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And how about hypnobirthing? Is that something that you did to help prepare you for your birth?
Yeah, I did. I actually took a bunch of courses, birth courses. One of them was hypnobirthing and one of them was hypnobabies. They're a little bit different than each other. But yeah, the concept is pretty much the same where you are really tuning into your body. So I always say, you're putting your body into hypnosis, but most people misunderstand hypnosis because, again, because of media, we've had these preconceived notions of like hypnosis is like, I'm going to put you under a spell and I'm going to make you bark like a dog. So it's nothing like that. It's really about learning to tune into your own body and listening to your body. So that was one of the things that helped me the most. I did have some experience with that a little bit before because I got into meditations and a lot of mindfulness. So that helped me even more on top of that, because there were audios that you listen to constantly, even audios you listen to when you go to sleep. So your subconscious mind is constantly listening to these positive audios and affirmations that you're constantly, increasing your confidence before the event actually happens. So there was a lot of homework basically that went into it beforehand. That's why I say it's not just that it's going to come to you naturally, because it won't. You're going to freak out the minute you start to feel a little bit of pain if you're not prepared. So hypnobirthing really helped me take it to the next level, basically.
Yeah, that was actually something I didn't really utilize or like specifically learn about hypnobirthing myself because I also had like a pretty strong yoga and like meditative practice. But I do
Yeah.
think in the future I would maybe kind of like expand my knowledge around it a little bit more, because I did have back labor pretty much the entire time, and it
Mhm.
was pretty painful. The
Yeah.
only thing that gave me any relief in the beginning was like a TENS unit, and that was it. Like I couldn't even do like the stairs or do anything because my legs were numb, like literally just completely
Yeah.
numb from
Uh,
her pressing on some nerve.
or-
So I would definitely recommend that for anyone who doesn't have like a mindfulness practice, and then, you know, look into it anyways, even if you do. So like you said, you can kind of strengthen it, take it to the next level, and all of those good things.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's funny because most people that I meet, that I talk to, they have never meditated. So I think that's the same with majority of the population. I mean, I was one of those people that didn't even know what meditation was until like just a few years ago. And when you learn about it, it's something that, you think it's taboo. It's something way out there. It's a hippy dippy thing. And it's nothing like that. I think it's something that we all should learn, regardless of if we're giving birth or not.
Mhm.
Meditation and mindfulness helps us in so many ways, which I'm sure you know as well. Like it just helps you actually recenter yourself, calm your body down.
Mhm.
Even in stressful situations, you could use this. It doesn't have to be just for birth. So I always even say to my clients that it's not just for using it towards your birth, because trust me, after that baby arrives, it's going to be so much stress that you're going to want to have the tools to be able to, like, recenter and calm yourself, because there'll be times where in the middle of the night it might be that something happens with the baby and you don't know what to do and you might freak out. But when you are at the uh well connected to your mind and body, it's a lot easier for you to like settle down and just be calm and just actually rationalize things and realize, like, okay, what do I need to do, and actually think clearly. So it helps you with so many different things, and not just birth. But I think birth is such a huge event in a woman's life that it has to be emphasized, because it's kind of like make us or break us. Because if you have a traumatic birth experience, which I've heard this from a lot of people I've talked to, is that it affects you for years and years, even into like your, later years. You still remember the details of a traumatic, like I had a grandmother tell me all the horrific things she had about her kids when she gave birth to her 4 kids in Italy about 50 some odd years ago. So it's like it stays with you. That feeling, even like if you had like pain or, just was absolutely traumatic for you, those emotions stay with you unless you do work to actually release that energy. It will stay with you. But the memory of that birth will forever stay with you. That's why I always it breaks my heart when I hear women that have traumatic first time experiences, because it's like no women should experience that. Birth should be about empowering women, because we are only living beings that can bring life into this world. So we should be celebrated, and we should be, congratulated for being able to accomplish something so big in our lives. And it's just not like that, in at least in our society. There are other societies that still celebrate women, still, have parties when there's a woman gives birth, not just because a baby is born into this world, but also because the mother actually gave birth, and that all on its own is such a huge triumph. So yeah, we just need to celebrate women a lot more. I mean, with anything else, we still have inequality with women. So this is definitely like my area that I'm like, okay, I want to help women have a better birth experience so that they could, have good memories to look back on for years and years to come.
Yeah. And to add to that, a traumatic birth, that's also traumatic for the child. And that can
Yeah.
stay and like imprint on the child as well. And really, sometimes it can like go unnoticed, because
Yeah.
who would ever think about that? but things can come up later in their life.
Yep.
And yeah, it's because they went through a crazy traumatic experience as well, not just the mom, and then even partners too, depending on
Yeah.
what is going
Yes.
on. My older sister, she kind of had a traumatic birth. I know my friend who had a traumatic birth, and it's like their babies, their wives are taken into different rooms, and they're probably just left there with like minimal answers, and they feel so like, helpless, and they have no idea what's going on. So it's such a big impact that I don't think people realize.
Yep.
And it could have potentially been prevented if you really, really empowered yourself, or if you had someone by your side like yourself to really help advocate for you, right? That's what, doulas and birth coaches are for. They're there to help you. So when you're like mid contraction and someone is asking you like, "Oh, what do you want to do?" and you can't even think at that time, like it can
Right.
just be so beneficial to have someone there and to help your partner too, because sometimes they might be running around like their head cut off like a chicken or something like that. But yeah, it's
Yeah,
crazy.
I'm glad
And
you brought up the partner. Yeah, because the partners get forgotten about. Like, I feel bad because they do get forgotten about. Even my husband used to say, he's like, nobody asked how I'm doing after the birth. It's like, yes, I have to say, like, the husbands or the partners in general, just the focus is so much on the mother that we forget that they're invested and involved in this just as much as you are. Just because they're not giving physical birth to the baby doesn't mean that they don't have the same anxieties or the same worries and concerns as you do, especially if you are, having a difficult time with it. No partner wants to see their own partner that's giving birth, be in a difficult position or be in pain. Like, we got a doula for my birth just because of my husband. Like, I literally hired a doula because my husband had so much anxiety around birth, about, especially if it was because it was a home birth, that I wanted him to have that support, that in case something happens, there is somebody there to comfort him as well. And it honestly, it worked out so well that the doula didn't even make it to my birth because it happened so quickly. But just the fact that we need to help our partners feel supported as well. Because, like you said, if the wife and the baby are taken to another room, like they feel helpless. What are they supposed to do? If they are well equipped with the knowledge as well, then they have an idea that, okay, she's lost a lot of blood and they're taking her to another room. There are certain things that, basic minimum knowledge would help them know that, okay, this isn't that bad. It's going to be okay. We just have to wait it out. But yeah, I feel like the partners do get forgotten about most of the time.
hmm yeah. So can you share a little bit about your birth? It sounds like it went pretty quickly, pretty smoothly. So kind of like I
For
loved
sure.
watching and listening to birth stories when I was pregnant. So I think it can always be fun for the listeners too, and maybe
Yes.
really shine like a positive light on it as well. Today's episode of Rising into Mindful Motherhood is proudly sponsored by the Confident Conception Membership. Are you or someone you know on what feels like a never-ending journey to motherhood, facing an uphill battle of fertility challenges? I'm Dr. Katie, your podcast host, pharmacist, and integrative fertility coach with over a decade of experience. I've been where you are, and I understand the roller coaster of emotions and heartache. That's why I've created the Confident Conception Membership, a program designed to help you address the real reasons behind fertility challenges. Like my client Elizabeth, who struggled with fertility for 9 years, having tried and failed other programs. She was in disbelief when just a couple of months into using my Confident Conception method, she finally got her first positive pregnancy test and welcomed her healthy baby boy this year. Using the Confident Conception method, we combine traditional medicine and energy healing to unlock your innate and abundant fertility potential. This isn't just about putting a Band-Aid on to cover up the physical symptom. It's about healing the energetic and physical root causes. As a member, you'll receive personalized guidance, bi-weekly live coaching calls, and become a part of a supportive community of like-minded women who truly understand what you're going through. We offer flexible payment options, plus our annual members receive exclusive savings and bonuses to accelerate their path to pregnancy. Don't let another month of frustration and overwhelm pass you by. As a special offer to our listeners, you can use the promo code PODCAST10 to receive 10% off the lifetime of your membership. Secure your spot now and expedite your journey to motherhood today by visiting www.youремpoweredfertility.com/membership to learn more and enroll. Together, we'll pave the way to your confident conception for a future filled with joy, unconditional love, and the pitter-patter of tiny feet. The link is in the show notes. Sign up today and your future self will thank you.
Agreed. And I'm glad you said that too, because one of the things that I did when I was pregnant was constantly watch home birth videos, because I had decided I wanted a home birth and I specifically wanted a water birth. I was constantly Googling and watching videos, and I had a couple of favorites that I would constantly rewatch, because that's just part of like visualization, like your mind thinking that that's you giving birth. So I was just imagining myself in that position. And when you are watching a calm birth that is so serene and you're like, oh my God, I want to be there. I want that birth. That's when your mind starts to connect that it is possible that you can also have a birth because someone else is just doing it. You're watching them have a birth. The unfortunate thing is that there isn't a lot of that online. You know, obviously with media, there's constant like negative representations of birth, which is all traumatic and scary and painful, versus thankfully for the people that do record their births and post it and you are able to watch that. I mean, if there was no internet, I don't know how we would have been able to do this. So thankful for all of that stuff, but being able to watch positive birth experiences really helped me. So my birth experience was literally out of this world. I couldn't believe that it had happened the way it happened. Till this day, when we talk about it, my husband says, I would have never thought it would happen this way, because we had never once seen or heard of anybody else's close to us that was anywhere near that when mine happened the way it did, we're like, that's it. That was so good. That was amazing. So my labor started on a Sunday, and we were just hanging out, just having a Sunday, and it was it was in December, so we always have like Christmas movie marathons at that time. So we were just having a Sunday afternoon, and I started feeling a little bit of cramps, and basically the afternoon started with a little bit of cramps, and I didn't think much of it. So at that point, I guess I was in labor. And towards the evening, I think it was around 8 o'clock, is when I was like, okay, I'm starting to feel something. So I think something might be happening. But then I was like, okay, well, you know, I've heard these things come and go for days, sometimes even weeks. So this could be nothing. So we went along, not thinking anything of it. And then I was like, okay, I'm really tired. So I'm going to go and take a bath and then maybe just take a Gravel and just go to sleep. And Gravel was only because I don't really take medication, but my midwife had mentioned that, you know, just take it if you feel like there is something happening, so that it actually like puts your body at ease so that you can go to sleep and rest. So long and behold, I went into the bath, and then things just started really quickly from there. Within an hour, I was just basically on the bed, and I was like, no, something is happening. So my husband actually called the midwife. He was freaking out. So he called the midwife and told her, and she's like, I think it's still early. I had lost my mucus plug at that point. And she's like, no, it doesn't sound like it was her mucus plug. So I think it was she's fine, but maybe I'll just come and check in on her, because I can kind of hear she's moaning and groaning a little bit in the background. And so thankfully she was only 20 minutes away, because by the time she got there, I was moaning and groaning pretty loudly. And this was the funny thing. because in none of those videos I had heard any of the women moan or groan like the way I did, I thought there was something wrong with me. So I
Mhm.
was sure that my midwife was going to come over and say that, okay, we need to go to the hospital. And I was like, no, I don't want her to come over. So when she came over, she actually is like, she checked me, and I told her that I didn't want to be checked just because I didn't want it to discourage me in case I was like 2 centimeters or whatnot. And she checked me and she said, "You're fully dilated, 10 centimeters. And if you want your water birth, you're going to need to get in the tub, our ensuite tub, right away." And we hadn't even had time to blow up the birth tub that I had to rent it out. So that stayed in the box. I
Wow.
jumped into the pool, and within 15 minutes, 3 pushes later, my little one was born in the sack. So
Wow.
it's called the mermaid birth, where the baby is born in the sack, and it's considered good luck, but it
Mhm.
happens 1 in 80,000 births. So I mean, of course, I thought like she was like a unicorn, a mermaid, but it was so serene that we're just like, I could do that again right away, like right after. It was just so amazing that I'm like, oh my God, all this time and all this like preparation and anxieties around people telling me that,
Mhm.
someone telling me close to me that, oh, don't, if you don't get the epidural, it's going to feel like a dinosaur coming out of your vagina. It's like, it was nothing like that. It was like the best experience. I'm like, oh my God, I have to share this information because more women should experience it the way I did, or at least even their own way, but a positive where they're like, that's it. That was amazing. So yeah, that's, yeah, where we started.
Love it. Love it. Yeah. So right now you help women, right? You coach women about their births. So have women had similar birth experiences to yours?
Yeah, I had maybe one person be very close to my birth. So I've actually changed the way I teach it now. So I'm starting to do a group coaching where it would be more of like a group of women in a probably a Zoom meeting, and where we would actually be learning it together, because I think it's a lot more hands-on and a lot more involved, where people will do the work, because that's the part is that you have to do the work. So the one person that I had that did do the work, she had an absolutely amazing birth. She did want to have a birth in the hospital, so we went through all the interventions that would be coming up and everything, like I do with everybody else, and the basic knowledge of, like, the things you can say no to, the things you should say no to. And she had an absolutely amazing birth experience. She still said it wasn't like how she wanted it, because there was still a lot of pressure from the medical staff, which really frustrated her because they kept making her nervous and just adding anxiety, where she was just trying to relax and she just wanted it to be left alone, and wanted to do her thing. They just kept intervening and trying to pressure her, and then pressuring her husband, to a point where her husband just said, get out, like, we don't want anyone in this room in the next hour. And within that hour, she progressed so much quicker. So if knowing that you can say no to a lot of the interventions, even if it is in a hospital.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think if you can have like a nice birth in a hospital, then that's definitely like an achievement because
Yes.
they are just bugging you so much. And that's actually a really big reason. So we had planned the entire time to give birth in a hospital. Naturally, we had hired a doula. And then halfway in my pregnancy, that's when we decided, no, we're doing a home birth. We had just learned too much. And tuning in to like, okay, I could just like
Mhm.
place my body in a hospital and feel what I would feel. And like I could just feel my body constricting, closing up, like shutting down. And I can only imagine, like, I just think that my labor would completely stop if I entered a hospital. So that's really a feeling that I tapped into for myself. And I was like, I can't do that. And actually, our moms had come they had only popped their head in to say a quick hi. And even just from that, my labor stalled a little bit. So I think
Oh, wow.
if there's a next time, like probably we probably won't have anyone come over, or they just won't come upstairs. And
No,
maybe not even like even really the midwife and the doula, they were like, we're just gonna leave you guys like alone. You can let us know if you need us. But yeah, and that's just primally like how our bodies want to birth anyways, right? We want to be in a dark place, a safe place, all those things.
yeah, I always use the example of like in nature, animals, including um, cats. Cats is the example I always use. Cats, when they are pregnant, you probably know this too. When they are pregnant and want to give birth, they always go to a very secluded place,
Mhm.
dark, quiet place by themselves, and they give birth to their little to their litter. And that's exactly how we want to give birth, is we want it to be quiet. We want so that we can tune into our body, because all of our five senses are distractions to us when we're in labor.
Interesting. I definitely think the next time, um, if we have another child, that I either want to like birth alone a lot longer than we did. I mean, I went into active labor pretty quickly. I completely skipped like early labor, so they came over pretty quickly. But I think next time I will want to do things alone for quite a while, because I think that that just feels good and right, and all of those things. And I would almost love to have my daughter be there too, but I don't know if that would be too much of a distraction. But I've seen like other home birth videos where all the kids are there and it seems so peaceful. But I was interviewing someone else who's also had home births, and I asked her if she was going to have her two boys there, and she was like, "No, nope, I'm not, because I don't." And then it kind of got me thinking, like, that's a valid point. It might not,
Yeah.
it might not be the best thing, or maybe more towards the end or something. I don't know. But um, so your husband was nervous about you doing the home birth. How did you convince him to do it? Because mine also took a little convincing as well.
Yeah. I mean, it's natural because I mean he's never seen or heard of anybody we know. His parents thought I was crazy, and basically society just doesn't think that that's normal. But I knew that education would help, because a lot of times when it's unknown, it's because we don't know enough about it.
Yeah.
So for me, it was educating him and showing him examples, which was documentaries, sending him articles nonstop. So one thing was showing him documentaries. We watched a couple of documentaries together. The other was sending him tons of articles that I would come across. And I also made him watch those natural home births that I was watching.
Mhm.
Not all of them, obviously, because he wasn't really into it as much as I was. But I did show him that, look, this is possible. So if other people are able to birth this way, why can't I? I can do this too. So I think that really helped him feel confident, to a point that I remember him actually defending me when people were asking him, why does she want to have a home birth? And he was actually giving them the information that he had learned.
Mhm.
So he was passing on that knowledge to other people, or never experienced something like this, which was really heartfelt for me, because I was like, oh, the information that I'm sharing with you, you actually, are sharing it with other people, which is nice, because that might help somebody else down the line.
Mhm.
So that was nice.
Yeah, and that I had a very similar experience. I know there's someone else I've interviewed who had a similar experience where the husband was like, "No way, we can't do that." And then, he
Yep.
would either watch a birth course with her, whatever, and then it was like, "Oh my gosh, we need to tell the world about this." So yeah, again, that education piece where it just like opens your mind. It's like, oh my gosh, like the possibilities are endless. Because for me too, I'm the only one in my family outside of my ancestors who had a home birth. Luckily, our families really didn't, exert their opinions too much on us. I will say though, some of my friends since have had like more traumatic births in the hospital, and it's almost like they're projecting their fears onto me when they're like, well, would you ever do it again? Like, would you really do that again? And, we have all had different experiences. Um, and sometimes it's hard to say, if you weren't giving birth in the hospital, would all of those things happened? You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And I think sometimes it's just the perspective is just made to seem like um, it just would have been a dire situation if you weren't in the hospital. But I just can't help but wonder if those, interventions is actually what caused things to go south in the first place.
Yeah, one of the things I heard once was we're in the hospital so that, you were able to save the mom and the baby. But my thing is, well, if they weren't in the, would all of those things have happened? Like the cascade of events, of interventions, they always lead to something where you do need medical emergency, you know, protocols to take place.
Right.
So it's kind of like the egg and the chicken. It's like, well, did they really need to be in the hospital? Did they really need to go through all that intervention? And in order for it to end up to a place where the mom and the baby had to be quote unquote saved.
Mhm.
So to me, it's like, regardless, there should be no interruptions to the flow of birth because the minute you start poking and probing the mom and the baby is when you're starting to add stress and just constant distractions. It's just like when you're trying to study and your phone is constantly giving you notifications
Yeah.
nonstop. And then you
Mhm.
can't turn it off. You can't tell them to go away. So they're constantly there. And what are you going to do about it? So you
Mhm.
have to take those precautionary action steps beforehand. Like you
Mhm.
said, trying to labor at home as long as you can, or making sure you know certain things that you can say no to. Just being prepared with those things. If you do decide to have a hospital birth versus a home birth, then yes, it puts you in a much better position. And that's what you want to do is just to make sure you have all the best possibilities lined up so that it hopefully ends in the way that you want it to.
Mhm.
Obviously, no birth is the same and no birth is going to be exactly the way you want it, but you can put certain things in place so
Mhm.
that it actually gets close to exactly how you want it.
Right.
Mine
Right.
was actually better than I wanted it, but and that is possible as well. But a lot of people think that a birth is so unpredictable that you can't control it. Of course, you can't control it, but
Mhm.
you are still in control of your body. So you are listening to your body, and you can change the path of how your birth ends up.
Mhm. Yeah, and make informed choices and decisions, and or having
Yeah.
people with you, like your partner or a doula, who can help advocate for you if you're just exhausted, can't even think about what the question is or anything like that.
Yep.
Um, so tell me, when did you become a birth coach? Was it the 4 years before you were pregnant, or did it happen after you had your baby? What did that look like?
Totally after. Before that, I wanted to just before I gave birth, I wanted to just be the scientist in my own experiment, I guess.
Mhm.
And so that went really well. And it was after I gave birth that I was like, okay, I have to share this. Even my husband said that this is something that none of our even friends and family probably know about. So it was something that one of my friends told me, when you have a knowledge of something that could help the masses, it's almost selfish of you to not share it and help people. So if you are afraid to share it, or if you think you're going to be judged for sharing it, that's your own selfishness that is holding you back, basically. So I really like that, because that stuck with me. And every time I have any fears or doubts of what I'm doing, I kind of go back. But it started, and I did one-on-one coaching, and now I want to go into group coaching, because I think having multiple women at the same time, um, with cohorts, can be a lot more beneficial, and I can get to connect with more women at the same time. So that's my goal right now, is to I'm starting a group coaching at the beginning of October, and that's like the thing that I'm really looking forward to, because I think it helps lower the price, obviously, so that more women are able to join it, and also that it connects more women with each other. It's actually so much fun to be able to be connected to other moms, even if they're not physically near you, with other moms that are in the same stages as you are, because me having my two of my friends who had birthed their babies at around the exact same times as I did was like so tremendous. The amount of support we had for each other was so helpful. Just even sharing basic information of what your kid is going through and what my kid is going through. Oh, this is normal. Oh, your kid just went through that because they're a couple of weeks earlier than mine. It just helps you feel so much more confident about everything, like feeling better about, the things that you're going through, the struggles you're going through. And that's the thing about motherhood. At the beginning, it's just a guessing game. So you really want to just have a support of the village that they talk about. We no longer have that village in these days and age, but at least if you have a group of women, even if it's virtual, that you have that support with you throughout motherhood.
Awesome. Okay, so it's all virtual then. It sounds like. Can people sign up
Yeah.
anytime, or do you only open it at certain times of the year? Like how long is the program? Like what does all that look like, in case anyone's listening that's pregnant or will be expecting soon, or any of those things?
Yeah, for sure. So it's an 8-week program. I would suggest women to take it at least before 7 months. Like the latest I would say would be 7 months, because it's a lot of you do have to do the work. There is going to be, as a coach, I hold you accountable and I expect you to do the work. So as and I do open it only every 3 months.
Okay.
So the next one is going to be October, and the one after will probably be in the new year. Because I put a lot of focus and energy into each person. When I did one-on-one, I want to make sure I at least try to do that with a group. And there will be a maximum of 10 people, because that's the maximum amount of people I can focus on at a time. So it will be 10 people starting in October, and it will be basically a weekly meetup. And there will be obviously homework that they'll have to practice and do on their own. And I'll be definitely holding them accountable for it.
Awesome. Love it. That sounds great. And
Yeah.
I agree. Like you don't want to be starting at like 8.5 months pregnant. Like you want to make sure
Yes.
you have time to work through the program and really integrate it and implement it. And then obviously, sometimes babies come early, so you want to make sure that you
Yeah.
can get through it as well. Awesome. So where can the listeners find you? Where can they learn more about you and more about this program?
Yeah, so they can definitely go to holisticbirthcoaching.com. That I actually have a free birth plan that I put on there. So it's a free planner that I always say, if you, it's not my saying, but if you fail to plan, if you, what's the say? Oh, no, I just forgot it. If you fail to plan, if you plan to fail, no, sorry, I totally messed that up. if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. Sorry, there it is. So that is my thing. If you are not planning for your birth, then you're just leaving it up to chance. So having a birth plan was one of the first things that I did when I was pregnant. And I'm really glad I did, because it forces you to actually decide the things that you want. And the planner that I created, it's an actual visual planner. So if you're a visual person like me, it has visual images. You can change up the text, the colors, whatever, to however where you like it. So you can also share it with your birth partner and your birth team, which I highly suggest, because if you want them to be present in your birth, you want them to be as involved and as knowledgeable as you, about the information that you want them to know. So that is a free planner that is available to anybody, and that I will definitely be sharing more information on the next cohort on there as well.
Awesome. Yeah. And the birth plan is nice too, especially if you're giving birth in a hospital, for things like after birth, right? Like, do you want delayed cord clamping? Do you want to not do the bath? Do you want to opt out of the Hep B shot, vitamin K, like the eye ointment, like all of those things? If you're giving birth in a hospital, like those are standard. They're just going to do them unless you say, no, I don't want the eye ointment. I want you to delay, the cord clamping and just all of those pieces that sometimes we don't think about. We're so focused on the birth, but then like once you give birth, there's all of these technically interventions that happen to baby. And it might vary state by state and even country by, like you're in Canada, we're in the US, but for the most part, you should have a say in what happens to your baby after you give birth.
Yeah, and it's so important for your birth partner to know this information, because like you said, when you're in the middle of birth and if they're asking you, hey, do you consent to us using forceps, you are in no mind or state of mind to be able to think logically, because that way they can advocate for you. They are your biggest advocates. And that's why I say partners sometimes get forgotten about, because they do play a crucial role in your birth, and we do need to acknowledge them for it.
Amazing. Well, do you have any final words or anything else that you wanted to share with the listeners?
No, other than I just think that every woman deserves to experience a positive birth experience at least once in their life, because it is something that just sets you off on a positive note into motherhood, because it's a cascade of events. I know moms who have had traumatic births, and that has stayed with them to a point that they can no longer enjoy the newborn phase, when their baby is, their focus is somewhere else on what had happened, and they can't let it go because they were so determined to have that birth that they wanted, and it didn't pan out, that they can no longer, get over it to focus on the good. So it does affect you for, months, years down the line. And I want women to know that you do have the ability to have an out of this world experience, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise.
Yeah, I love that. Well, thank you so much, Ghazal, for being here. It's just been a beautiful conversation, and make sure you guys go find her, watch what she's up to, and probably by the time this is recorded, she'll be opening it back up in January, I presume.
Yeah.
Yeah, January 2024. Again. Oh my goodness. Well, thanks so much.
I know, I can't even imagine it.
I know.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much for tuning in to the Rising into Mindful Motherhood podcast. If this episode resonated with you or gave you an aha moment, stop what you're doing right now and write a review. This simple act of kindness helps me get this podcast out to connect with as many women as I possibly can. I also have a special offer. If you send me a screenshot of your review, I will take $250 off one of my premium coaching containers. Let me know what resonated with you the most and why. So connect with me in my free Facebook community or tag me on Instagram. You'll find both listed below. Thanks again from the bottom of my heart for tuning in to this episode, and I'll see you next time.